Hi, everyone. It's important to understand that this area where this house is located is not the downtown of Moscow, unlike the previous tours that I did about Schechtel's mansions. Fyodor Schechtel, my favorite architect of Art Nouveau and Neo Gothic style. Well, those were in the heart of Moscow, in some of the most expensive areas. But this is back in the days when it was constructed and they finished in 1904, it was just the outskirts of Moscow. And believe it or not, but from both sides of this house, there used to be two Moscow rivers flowing freely. After that, one river would be diverted and the other one would be just taken into a pipe. And then obviously Moscow was growing, especially in the Soviet period. It grew exponentially, if I can say so. And obviously now it's just a big um, industrial area with some industries that emerged in, I would say, early Soviet period, because at that point it was still kind of outskirts of the city, and we will understand why it became an industrial area. And right now it's even more just residential than industrial, to be honest, because the industrial zones where, well, every city tends to push them as far from the downtown and residential areas as possible due to pollution and other things. But when it was built, it looked um, as a just a pure gem in the middle of the almost in the wilderness. So it belonged to the family of Nosov merchants, and I don't think you've ever heard of this family. But Nosovs, by the way, were also one of the richest families. Vasily Nosov was the one. This photo is just very bright indeed. It has nothing to do with the video. Right now, after those glare issues, I'm always worried whether it's me or it's not. Well, that's just the photo, the old photo. And Vasily Nosov, we will speak about the family and what they did. He already at that time was a well-established and really, really well-to-do businessman of Moscow. I would say he was in top 10, maybe top 15 richest men in the country, in Moscow, but in the country as well. Let's say merchant class. And he contacted Lev Kekushev, an architect. Well, you already know Fyodor Shachtel, and I'm really proud. I really take pride in making the world know about Fyodor Shachtel, because he was a really good architect. And we've seen so many houses by him, I think five by now, and there will be more, I promise. But Kerkushev is less known, but he's my second favorite Art Nouveau architect. And by the way, he was the first one to construct Art Nouveau building in Moscow, and Shechtel was the second. So Lev Kerkushev, he he at that point he was already quite famous. Altogether, I would say that in further Schachtel built, well, now we know of about 80 something buildings that survived up until nowadays. With Lev Kerkushev, it's less houses. His career was just shorter, and some buildings unfortunately also did not make it well after the Soviet times. Let's just see a little bit what kind of buildings in Moscow you can find built by Kerkushev, and you will see it's again Art Nouveau, some eclecticism, and lots of whimsical designs. And one could easily say, "Wow, this looks like Schachtel." I would say Kerkushev and Schachtel, they were very much, I would say, similar in their, I would say, drive to create some absolutely whimsical houses. Uh, and that's what they are remembered for. They didn't really consider each other as competitors, because they all had, I would say, quite well, I would say very big clientele. And also, as you can see, they built in quite diverse styles, from Art Nouveau, some kind of some kind of neo-Gothic, a little bit of neo-Renaissance, and again Art Nouveau, and well, I would say pure eclecticism and a little bit of Art Deco as well. Obviously, there are a lot more buildings, but we are focusing on this house. And originally, well, I think from here you can already see that the buildings surrounding this house, I would say, are very different. Like, take a look at this one. This is Elektrozavod. It's the big plant manufacturing all sorts of electric appliances, and it was built in the end of the 1920s. So this is exactly the period of rapid industrialization of the Soviet Union, of Moscow. And this area just happened to be far enough from the downtown to start building different facilities here. So this is an interesting neighbor. However, it's probably one of my favorite industrial buildings in Moscow. Trust me, there are so many gorgeous factories built by the merchants at the turn of the 20th century and also 1920s was the period of, let's say, after the Civil War in Russia, when the Soviet Union was established. The first, I would say, 7 or 8 years was the period of new economic policy. We call it NEP, when private property was allowed and encouraged, and there was interaction with the Western world, with Europe, and there was freedom for artists and architects, and that's, I think it shows in these buildings. So maybe someday, well, we could really talk about some uh, industrial buildings in Moscow and St. Petersburg, because we have a lot. I'm sure you have a lot of it also in Europe and in the States, but given the history and the background, it's definitely going to be different, but similar. So Art Nouveau, right? So no symmetry. I would say the fluidity of forms, soft lines, flowers, swirls, waves, and yeah, you can see all of that. I like the fence very much. By the way, so the photos are mostly from my camera roll. I have been to this house, I think, 10 times at least. And I even managed to take some of the guests of the when I live in Moscow. I live in Moscow for almost 6 years, so I even managed to take some of my guests to this house, and they appreciated it. I didn't work as a tour guide in Moscow. I worked as an interpreter, but nevertheless, this is exactly where my love of guiding architecture, museums, I would say, uh, came into its own. Yeah. So, uh, and also Oleg filmed it. I think it was like early spring when he was in Moscow. Well, this year, and also I'm sharing short videos from my phone and one of my last visits to Moscow. But that was long ago. That was several years ago. Nevertheless, and lots of also photos from archives, from the website of the Nosov House, which is the youth library, by the way. So, who were the Nosovs? Well, Vasily Nosov was a merchant. His grandma started it in early 19th century. They were also old believers. We already spoke about it, that St. Petersburg was about aristocracy, but Moscow was about prospects and business, and that's exactly how the division would remain up until the revolution. And many successful businessmen happen to be old believers. That's just an interesting phenomenon. Um, and well, Nosov basically took just inherited the business from his grandma and his grandfather, and that's how it would be just passed on later on also to his children, but not for long, because the revolution obviously put an end to all of it. So these are the grandparents of Vasily Nosov, about whom we are talking about today and whose family we're talking about today. And that's him in, I would say, very mature age. I like this photo very much because you can see how big his family was. He had six daughters and only one son. He managed to get all his kids, well, find the spouses for the kids, and I, he just was looking for a house for himself. And well, at the point as house was finished, was being built, the youngest daughter was not yet married, but shortly after it was finished, she found she found the one. It was a big, quite happy family, and always full. The house was always full with family members. There were parties. There were because it was family business, and that's how it used to be in the old believers' families. Oh, well, every family member definitely had their share of business, depending on what their strengths and weaknesses were. So, what did this family do? This family produced big shawls. I'm sure you've seen these shawls. Well, for those of you who have been to Russia, I'm sure you've seen this type of shawls. So, the first company that started um, manufacturing these shawls, not handmade, but it was woman and in the, I would say, in the facilities. It was the Nosov's family, and they started off as just several sewing machines and the grandma of Nosov. At that point, she was quite a young lady. And then little by little, it would be more sewing machines and more um, seamstresses hired. And this is how little by little these very big shawls, you can see how big they are, just conquered Moscow and big parts of Russia. I'm sure you've seen similar artworks, or Boris Kustodiev with the Moscow merchant ladies so wearing these big shawls or scarves. It's more like a shawl to me. And yeah, so 90% probability those were the shawls exactly produced by the Nosov's factory. You can see them. So and eventually, by the time Nosov, the Vasily Nosov, was in charge, took charge of the business, they already owned several facilities, big facilities or manufacturing sites for the shawls and also other fabrics. They also had um, hundreds and thousands of sheep that because they were made from wool, sheep's wool, and also merino. So the family owned farms, the sheep farms, owned the manufacture sites, and it was very common for such big industrial families to build small like towns for the workers because they basically gave workplaces to hundreds and thousands of people. So Nosovs became very rich and well known across the country. So this is just one facility that they owned, not far from Moscow. By the way, they were, well, at least as it is said in the website of the Nosov Library, that this dynasty at least came to Moscow in the 17th century. That's the 1600s. And so they are obviously one of the oldest Moscow dynasties. And yeah, that's also one of the sites that belong to them. So that's the girls I was talking about. One, two, three, four, five, six girls, and Augusta was the youngest one who wasn't married when Nosov commissioned the house to Lev Kekushev. And originally, he wasn't really thinking of anything Art Nouveau. Nosov had an idea in mind already, and we will talk about it. Nosov was a very well-educated man and with a, I would say, great wide scope. And he had an idea of somewhat, he wanted a small house for himself, basically, and for a short while to share it with his youngest daughter. And by that time, um, eh, well, he lived already with his second wife. His first wife passed away a long, long time ago, and we don't have photos of her. There's not really much information. So he lived together with his second wife and, and Augusta, the youngest daughter. And he wanted this house to look more like the house somewhere in New England. Um, and there was only one son. As I said, six daughters and one son. So his son is just, come to think of it, it was quite common among these old believers, merchant families, to intermarry, to marry each other, because it was it seemed quite logical. The two rich families getting married will only multiply their wealth. And that's exactly what happened with the Nosov dynasty, because Vasily Nosov, the only son of Nosov, married Yefimya Rybushinskaya. The Rybushinsky family, we already know of them because the Rybushinsky house that we visited a few weeks ago was built by Shechtel. And if you remember yesterday's story, and if you didn't, the recording will be shared hopefully tomorrow. So Rybushinskis also purchased the house, the Morozov's house, also built by Shechtel, the one that is probably one of the most inaccessible buildings in the entire city. We visited it yesterday. So um, that was it. So his only idea would be to have a small house for himself and his wife, and all the other property that they had multiple houses, would be given to the children. Lev Kekoshev listened to him carefully, and Nosov even showed him what kind of house he wanted to have. So, as I said, Nosov was a very educated man. He spoke several foreign languages, including English. So he was subscribed to several journals, like Victorian Houses and the Scientific American. And he wanted to have a house like that. And I know there are still a lot of houses built in this style in the States. And they are gorgeous indeed. This is, by the way, the copies of the journals that Nosov had at home. He didn't want a house like that. He wanted something more opulent than that. So eventually, Kyakushev came up with the design, and that was the design. Looks very much like those American houses from the American Scientific American Journal, and this project was approved. But then somehow, for some reason, next month, another project was submitted, and that was it. All of a sudden, it's Art Nouveau. I would say it looks very much like some, I would say, very authentic Art Nouveau. It's not a Russian Art Nouveau. It's more like the Belgian Art Nouveau. And we know that Belgium is considered the motherland of Art Nouveau, the birthplace of Art Nouveau. So that's that's exactly what they claim. And yeah, I can see these features. I would say this is very classic Art Nouveau here that we're looking at. And the blueprints were submitted for approval to the municipality, and it was all approved. And it took Kekushev, the architect, less than a year to build the house. So in 1904, it was finished. There are blueprints that survived. These are the photos that are provided on the website of the Nosov's library. I remind you that now this visit is easy to access because this is the, how shall I put it, the youth library. That's it. And it also has a big co-working room. Imagine a co-working in the Art Nouveau house built in 1903, 1904. Quite incredible, I should say. But when I was there, it didn't have this co-working space, but now it does, as I was told. And yes, the house, by the way, was built from wood. It's not so easy to see the wood under the layers of plaster, and the house underwent 20-year long restoration. And that's me, by the way. I don't remember when exactly this photo was taken on one of my 10 visits. And I was in love with this house the very first time I saw it. Here you can see in the roof that it's wood. It's basically wood everywhere up until this. From here, the base is stone. It's mainly, well, because that was exactly how it had to be done. You needed to have the stone base, and then you could build from whatever material you wanted. And also because there were a lot of, there's, as I said, there were two rivers flowing from both sides of this plot. It looked like a little bit of um, like peninsula. So they had to protect the house from the humidity, and so that's why it has the stone base. But everything else is wood covered with very, very thick layers of plaster. Um, the surprising thing is that the house, after the revolution, I would say it's a survivor. It was used originally as the nursery school and kindergarten for the children of the factories that used to belong to Nosovs but were nationalized after 1917 revolution. So in a way, well, everyone from the family were evicted from the house. So Nosovs were evicted and Nosovs immigrated. Um, well, look at this at the design of the fence. Just the the perfect Art Nouveau. Perfect Art Nouveau. We'll talk about it in a minute. That's the lion heads were sort of the signatures of Lev Kakushev because Lev means lion in Russian, and that's why he used the lion's head as his signature. We know Sheffield had his own signature swirl, but Kakushev had the lion's head, and he could put them on the houses as means of decoration, or they could be just placed somewhere in the distant corner of the plot or the house, just as a punchline in a way. And I think here you can see that this is I would say, stone base. Other than that, it's wood. Wood for several reasons. Well, it was cheaper, yes, but it was also more natural, and it had the wooden houses had better air, and also I would say it kept the heat better than than the house built from stone or bricks. But Art Nouveau always presupposes the comfort and the use of the state-of-the-art technologies available at that time. We spoke about it. This is the combination of the convenience, comfort, and but still in a way to take you closer to nature, far from this industrialized world. And we will see that. And exactly that's why they chose wood as the main material. This is the photo taken in the Soviet times. I would say late Soviet period. Somehow here was a small kiosk selling cigarettes. I'm not sure which period exactly it was, but you can see that the house looks quite different from what it looked like back then. And by this time, the nursery school and the kindergarten had already moved from here, and they were housed in this building for about a decade or so. And then there were several other institutions located in this house, and then it was just closed and slowly dying, unfortunately. And then there was an initiative of one library to to use this house as one of the branches of the youth of Russian library, the youth library, and this is how the restoration started in 1970 in 1980s, I believe, and it lasted for 20 years. Um, These are the photos I found online. These are the children from this nursery school and the kindergarten, the children of the workers of the Nosov's factory. Obviously, in the Soviet times, it would no longer be called the Nosov's family, not Nosov's factory. It will be called Videnska factory, and then the something with October. I don't remember now. Even it doesn't matter. So, but I guess in a way, Nosov um, liked just of the idea of giving his house, not intentionally, that nobody asked him if he was okay with it, to the children of the people who once used to work for him. In a way, it felt probably okay, but in fact, we don't know what he thought. And so this is the photos of the women who worked in this facility, in this children's facility. And after the restoration, the library opened eventually, about 10 years later, but it opened, and it's still a library, and anyone can come and visit. But the thing is that it's a very forbidden spot because it's 5 or 6 metro stations away from the heart of Moscow, and there is nothing really around this area. So it's mostly people who live in the neighborhood, or mostly those people who are there to see the house, like I was once and always will be. They know this place. So it's a pure gem. And I just thought to myself, no, I want to show this house to my audience. And I asked Oleg to film it because I knew he would be working in that area. And I asked him to film it just in case. And the time has come for Lev Kakushev. And I'm happy. I'm happy to be able to take you there. So this is it's called the icing. Well, it's a Russian term. I'm sure there is also some term in English, but I haven't been able to find it. So we call it icing. Basically, they just put the combination of some clay and resin on the glass and let it dry, and that's the icing that they got. I would say every piece of glass is has this unique pattern, obviously. The decoration, so many doors survived the restoration. I mean, they survived and were just restored and are now back again on their original places. Obviously, at times of the children's facility, they didn't really care much about the preservation of the doors and lamps. So not obviously there are very few original lamps. There is very little, I would say almost no furniture. And most photographs, blueprints, and other printed materials, they were provided by the descendants of the Nosov's family. The Nosovs, after the revolution, is one of the original blueprints, well, the designs made by Kakushev, that's found in the archives of Moscow. But eventually, as you know, well, there were several of them. Eventually, this one was approved, but then Kakushev somehow managed to get Nosov to change his mind all of a sudden. So we are now in the drawing room and just skipping the Q&A in the middle and just have a longer one in the end. I hope you're okay with it. And yeah, so this is only thanks to Art Nouveau, only thanks to the times of the big development and industrial progress that we were able to have this convex glass and window frames. And when we were able to also saw all sorts of wooden construction of irregular shapes. The crazy thing is that the latches survived. This is the old style window latches. I'm sure you have. I think you have something similar in Europe. I think it's not a Russian invention for sure. And well, this is the original floors. By the way, the house didn't boast beautiful parquet floors. But what I think is quite incredible is that the floors are all original. There was also used the Mettlach tile, the German tile, uh, because it was practical. And some rooms still have this tiled floor, the Mettlach tile floor. Other than that, I would say it's very plain floor designs, quite plain. And it's not because Nosov didn't have enough funds for the parquet floors, but they just didn't want to splash out on the floors, and that's okay. That's the family tree of the Nosovs. So, according to this family tree, we know that the family, the first family member goes back to the 17th century, Moscow, and with after the revolution, the family members went very different ways. Some went to the States, some went to Paris. One daughter left for Belgrade, by the way. We know that Belgrade was one of the, I would say, popular destinations for Russian immigrants. And in this drawing room, the library has a small like photo exhibition of the family, and all these photos were provided by the descendants of the Nossos family. The library, at least from what I remember, they were always in touch, and the family members, the descendants, often visited the house. They even uh, gave some tours. Most of their descendants are from the Augusta, from the youngest daughter, and also from two other girls. And the lovely thing is, I mean, have a look. He looks so happy here, so genuine. Like this photo was not supposed to be published somewhere in newspapers. This is just for family archives. Look at this happy father with all these beautiful girls and only one son. Yeah, it was very common for old believers' families to have many children. It's They lived in some way. The old believers' communities remind me Jewish communities in a way. And there were a lot of rules, like unwritten rules. It was like a code, and there are a lot of books written on it. Just a phenomenon of our old believers' merchant families. These are the sons-in-law, and look with how much tenderness he's looking at his sons-in-law. Um, it was a fun family. It looked really fun. I like these photos very much. They have so much warmth, you know. It's so personable. It's so human. This was the study of Nosov, and um, again, the furniture is not original, but well, some furniture is original, but not all of it. I would say mostly the bookshelves, some bookcases are original. The fireplace is original. That is a yes, but restored. And I was told by one of my colleagues in Moscow that the restoration didn't really go too well, and some elements unfortunately lost forever. This was provided by the family, by the descendants. So this is the list of the doctors that worked for the medical facility for Nosov's manufacture. These are just some logs. I'm not sure what this is. And these are original documents. It's important to understand that the Nosov house is not a museum. It doesn't have a status of a museum. There are several exhibition halls where different events are held, different exhibitions that normally themed somewhat around the industry and the businesses in Moscow and some merchant families, since this is a merchant's house. Um, I would say, other than that, it's a library, but you can also see the house in you can see this house in multiple films because it's such a scenic venue. Here I see a face. I see a bird. It's like a Rorschach test. I see maybe a pelican or or a rooster. I don't know. But some people see here a flower, some people see nothing, some people see the snake. I don't know. But this is so the ventilation grids, the original, the house, just like the house we saw last night, the Morozov's house. The house, this house also was absolutely autonomous. It has its own um, a power station. It had water heating, so it wasn't the steam. It was it had the radiators, so it used water and heated water for just to keep the place warm, and it also had its sewage system connected to the drainage system of Moscow and the drainage systems from the facilities. I like the lamp, but this is, as far as I understand, this is the copy or a similar one that once used to be here. This is one of the lecture rooms. Since it's a library, there are also a lot of educational events held. And here, the bookcases are original, as well as the wooden panels, and the fireplace obviously is also original. The lamps are the copies of the originals. And look at this fireplace. Look at this glazed tiles, the mayolicas. Basically, what is a mayolica? It's the clay of different colors, different content, mixed with different pigments. And under certain temperatures, these pigments become oxides, and they become metals. So they are oxides, and they become metals, and that's why you have this glazing effect. And white, I use this word, peculiar colors. And that was a catch, because you had to be consistent with the content, with the amount of the oxides, with the amount of the pigment and the color of the clay and the temperature, in order to have a stable result, right? So you had to be very consistent with that. And there were, I think I shared it on one of my tours from long ago, so I don't expect it to remember, but there was so-called Abramtseva mosaic and mayolica manufacture that exactly aimed at the revival of these techniques, and they succeeded. And most of mm, tiles of this kind you can find in Russia from, let's say, turn of the 20th century. They were made in Abramtseva factory. 90%. So probability they once were made in the Abramtseva facility. The fireplace is believed to have been designed by Mikhail Vrubel. Yes, that Mikhail Vrubel, the Russian artist. I spoke about him yesterday because Vrubel was one of the, I would say, most Art Nouveau architects, artists at that time. And he did a lot of commissions for Shechtel, like the Morozova house, and for other houses as well that Shechtel worked on. And it's not, let's say, it's not 100% certain, but it looks like these designs of the tiles were made by Vrubel himself. And some of the artworks that Vrubel made, just for you to understand what kind of artist he was, like, well, this is the Swan Queen, the signature work of Kalkushev, for sure. And there are, by the way, there are several fireplaces in the house. This is the one in the upper floor. We're going to go there at some point on this tour. So it's this fireplace also survived, and it also looks very much like the Abramtseva style. Look at the furniture. So the furniture was also matched the design of the doors. However, Kekushev did not design every detail, every doorknob in the house. Most furniture was was made by the Meltzer Furniture Factory. Meltzers were the suppliers of the imperial court, so which made them the most reliable and the most, I would say, uh, trendy, uh, trendy furniture. So, but you could also they were known for the implementation of the catalog trade as well. So you could basically, starting from late 19th century, you could buy the big plaster decorations, the fireplace, mantelpiece designs. You could just order them like on IKEA or on the IKEA website, and it just was delivered to you, and you could put it. And but that also meant that somewhere else in the country, someone else had the similar mantelpiece or the similar bookcase or whatever, but not for now. Well, now for us, it's irrelevant. What is relevant is that it's still here. It survived all these years. So this is the copy of the land that once used to be here. It's it originally worked with electricity, so there was a power station in the house, and it was all operated by just several people. The original how shall I call, cupboard, the original cupboard, and the contents of the cupboard are absolutely sweet because this is the dishes, the porcelain, ceramics that actually used to be kept in this the word again, in this cupboard. Look at that. So you will see that some plates, some cups are, well, they have some cracks. They are chipped, and that's okay. This was the present from the descendants. They managed to keep this porcelain, and they gave it. Eventually, they have given it to Nosov's house. How on earth did they manage to save this and to carry it all the way uh, to Europe? By the way, not all Nosovs left. Three of the daughters with their husbands stayed. One of the daughters died in 1919, and well, others just managed to survive. And when nationalization was in full swing, so it was, I would say 1918, 1919, it was like that. So the Bolsheviks, some officials come and say, you and you, so you merchant or you former aristocrat, the comrade Galitsyn, let's say, you are allowed to take what you can carry with you. The rest stays. But if they had servants, if they had maids because they weren't over the, I would say, ordinary descent, they could take more. That's exactly what happened. One of the maids that used to work for the Nossos family, she managed to take the bedding with her. She managed to take some dishes. She managed to take some porcelain and some artwork with her, and then to obviously gave it to the Nossos family members. So that's how this, I would say, very plain, very boring plate. Um, it's there where it just had to be. Absolutely. Now we're going upstairs. Let's appreciate the stairs as well. This lamp is original. This is the photo from Wikipedia, I believe. It's not even my photo. And this is the, well, one of very few original chandeliers that survived. Um, Upper floor is less opulent. This, by the way, is the ceiling painting from the times of the Kindi. but they decided to keep it because it was quite nicely done, and they just restored it. I'm not sure whether the colors are original or during the Soviet times the colors were more vibrant. That's hard to tell. But originally, I thought that this was the ceiling decoration done by Kekushev. Well, but that was not. So it looked odd a bit. I was looking for some lions, but I didn't find any. This was also done for the kids of the nursery school, but it doesn't really look too odd. The designs look quite nice, a bit demure, and they just don't scream at you. So not bad. It's quite common for upper floors to be less decorated because those were private rooms, and very few people were supposed to see it. So there was no one to just there was no need to really spend money on any decoration of the upper floors. Um, those there were rooms mostly for Augusta, the youngest daughter, and there was also the bedroom for the wife of Nosov, and that was it. It's a small house. It's I can't even call it a mansion. It's just a house. And yeah, so this is Augusta. Just in case you forgot, this is, by the way, memorial item. This was given to Augusta after one of the trips to Europe that her family took, and the maid managed to carry it with her, and then she passed it on to the family, to the family. So this is etching from Europe. Just a nice present. Augusta was charming. Augusta was quick on the draw. Augusta was bright, and eventually she married also a man from another merchant's family, and they had several children together. And when the First World War started, she and her husband um, participated in the charity campaigns, and they also got certified as medical workers, like the first aid workers, so to speak. So this is the small co-working room. This is just a small library. This is the room for the library. This is the books on library that they keep it. And this is the former boudoir of Augusta Nosova. The dress didn't belong to her. We'll talk about it. Here we see some of the personal items that were passed also to the museum. Well, not the museum, to the library by the descendants. That's exactly the fireplace and lots of photographs. So the photographs were provided also by the family. Look at the design of the fireplace. Quite impressive. And they were, and by the way, fireplaces were in use still. And it could get really cold here. And this was not a summer house. This was the whole year round house. So during a winter time, this house was also heated with the fireplaces. So these are exactly the certificates, well, certifying that they completed the first aid course, and she and her husband worked in the first aid trains that were taking the wounded, well, soldiers and officers from the um, from the front line, and Augusta and her husband participated in this because everyone did, and because they wanted to help. This family was very generous, and we know that among the old believers, it was a must. The charity work was a must. The support of the less fortunate classes was a must. That's why Nosovs were also famous for their kindness towards the people who worked for them. So they were built hospitals, they were built kindergartens, they were built everything, all the facilities, and obviously the dorms for the workers of the factories. the sewing machine. And so this one is not from the well, great grandma of Augusta, but this one belonged to Augusta, and it's also stayed with the family, so with the descendants. The In the museum, well, I keep calling it a museum. It's not a museum. It's a library. So the library workers told me on the tour that this sewing machine was taken by Augusta when she was asked to leave by the Bolsheviks, and she uh, so this sewing machine basically saved them from hunger because they could sell some clothing, because they could always mend their own garments. So that was it was treated as even a family member, so to speak. And then it was passed on by descendants to this library, to the small memorial exhibition. The the shall I how shall I put it? The dress over there in the corner, it belonged to mother-in-law of Augusta Nosova, and it's the original one. It was also passed by one of the family members uh, and the descendants, and it's in a very good condition. I would say almost pristine condition. There were also some other garments. When I remember when in one of the visits, there was an exhibition on the produce of textile manufacturers of Moscow. It was quite common, by the way, to for old believers to establish some um, textile manufacturers and also just sewing some garment. It was quite widespread, but not only that, obviously, it's just kind of a generalization. And uh, the by the way, you may have noticed the stained glass on the doors. Most of them are not original. However, as we were told, it was a secret. Uh, they were left by the filmmakers that were just having their shootings in the house, and at some point, so this is the second wife of Nosov, but the administration of the library decided not to remove those designs because they looked quite organic in the house, and it does indeed. It does look organic. This is the photo. This is Augusta in her boudoir. You can see the fireplace here, all right, and I'm not sure what the artworks are, but you must have noticed gazillions of photographs. That's because the family loved photography very much. The girls each had their um, their cameras. They knew how to develop the photos, and there are just tons of them that survived. That's one of the children. I don't know which child and whose child this is. And this was filmed by Oleg, and I believe that he went there with his wife because his wife likes to follow him for his filmings. So Oleg quite often tells me that. Well, I kind of unintentionally help them, to go out on a date now that they have the child, so it's not so easy. So, and that's how Oleg sees that. So I'm happy that we let them have some some time. And these are so there are lots of photographs. Most of them are digitized, and you can even find them on the website of the library. And these photographs, I could watch them all day long. They are just fabulous. And with these photos, they are not the photos like the official ones for like in the, let's say, the Romanovs photographs. This was never really meant to be seen by anyone but the family members. I like this photo. So this photo was taken in the Nosov house. You can see the chairs. They also have the similar designs as cupboards. Um, I'm I'm not sure so not all the rooms have been restored. There are some rooms that are used by, well, it's just the office of the library. But I like this photo. The samovar. Um, I'm not sure what she's having there. So this is the photo I like very much. Probably that's my favorite. I'm just wondering what she's thinking. And Nosov himself liked to take photographs a lot. So this is Augusta, and this is also Augusta in the times of the First World War, um, um, just basically working as a nurse in on the train on the medical train, and a lot of photographs that were passed on that were given by the descendants that are living abroad, and there are always something else, something more coming. And this is one of the daughters, Tatiana. That's her. She married this man. I don't remember from which family he was. So also a merchant, and thus they multiplied their wealth and the three children. Look at this face. Very cute one. This is Euphemia. This is the third, the third. This is the not the third. No, no. The Euphemia was the wife of the only son. Yefimia Rybushinskaya was the wife to the only son, Vasily, who was named after the father, Vasily Vasilyevich. Hence, so again, was also a happy marriage. I don't know. This family was just blessed, I think. Um, Altogether, Nosov had about 20 something grandchildren at that point when the house was open. And this house was meant to be a small one, just for him, his wife, and Augusta. But eventually, every weekend or on big holidays, the house will be full, and it felt like it would just explode any minute from the number of people that managed to just the house managed to fit in. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So this is the original design. You can see that this is again this icing on glass and a little bit of the stained glass. And this is the original stained glass design. However, some other more intricate ones, they were left by the filmmakers, and the administration just thinks they look perfect and match the entire design. So this is it. This is some photo from my camera roll. Yeah, so let's have the Q&A. Sorry, I just decided to skip the one in the middle. I hope you found this place cute, and it's. I always felt so sorry for this house, and I think partly what I'm doing is, well, obviously it's my homesickness therapy, all these stories, as you know, so you are helping me very much, but also I think that, well, it's just so unfair to these precious buildings not to be seen, because obviously the Western world, European tourists are not really visiting Russia for obvious reasons. So it's kind of my way, at least, to make up for the houses that have nothing to do with what's happening. So it's adorable. And eye candy. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you. Yeah, and it looks surreal. And Moscow is like that. St. Petersburg is more, I would say, has more cohesion, has more architectural cohesion, if I can put it like this. But in Moscow, it's like that. So it can be an ugly residential area, and then all of a sudden, a beautiful eye candy just in the middle of this concrete jungle. So because Moscow is much bigger, and Moscow is more chaotic, and Moscow underwent the biggest growth in the past century. So I guess it's understandable, but still, so Moscow is very different. And I'm so proud that I was able to visit, I would say definitely 100 times more sites and museums than an average Moscovite. I know that. Icing glass is made by the sandblasting on glass. Well, it wasn't no, 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 it definitely was not. So I didn't know which term to use, so I used just this icing, but it wasn't sand. No, no, no. So I was told when I was on the tour in this house, so I was told that that particular glass was made in a different way, which was probably cheaper. I don't know. They just somehow poured some resin and some clay, like carpenter's clay, on the glass, and I think it was heated, and because it's sticky, it just uh, got completely stuck to the surface of the glass. So I'm not sure what the term is, unfortunately, because I don't think this is a very yeah. So Dolly, I know I need to trust you on that. You should know better. So I don't know what the term would be for the glass they have in the house. Thank you, Cindy. The first house showed porch to die for, but color kind of. This is nice, but by the way, it's interesting that you mentioned the pukey color. This is not the original color of the house. I was told by a very distinguished tour guide in Moscow who actually happens to have the same last name as I. So she's Irina Levina. She's one of the best Moscow tour guides ever. And I think I visited gazillions of her tours and left. I would say half every month I would leave half of my paychecks in Moscow on Irina's tours. So Irina told us on one of the tours that I mentioned that the restoration didn't go exactly the way it had to go. And I know also from Marina that some elements that were discovered in the house were basically thrown away because the restorers couldn't understand what they were. Like one of the machines that was used for the heating. The USSR will be recorded, yes, and it's going to be in 23 minutes from now. We'll wrap it up soon, but I want to finish with that since Robert brought up the pukey color. And when they got down to restoration, it was the original color of the plaster was absolutely unclear. It was just a mess. So they started cleaning, taking the layer after layer of the plaster, and they discovered the yellow, this pukey yellow. I don't know, pukey shade of yellow. And they thought that was it. But originally, the color, judging from the photos, specialists claim that it was sort of maybe very, very pale pink or some sort of ivorish. No idea. What is BBFN, please tell me? What is this, Dolly? I only slept like 6 hours, so my brain is not capable of understanding what it stands for. A beautiful house for a happy family. Was Miss Nosov the children books author? No, it's not that Nosov. It's not the Nosov that Maria, you know so much about Russian culture, obviously, well, given the background. No, it was Nikolai Nosov. It was the Soviet writer with the children books of Neznayka. But this was another Nosov, so the merchant's family, and they were not related. They were not related. No, I don't know whether it's a very common last name, however, but they were not related. That's what I know. Oh, bye bye for now. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Dolly. Thank you so much for dropping by. And yes, I will be sharing the recordings tomorrow on Tuesday at latest, I believe. Okay, so let me share with you the links for those who joined a little after we started, just in case. So in 20 minutes from now, I will be taking you to the apartment of Sergei Kirov. And yes, that Kirov and the Kirov Theater, which is now Mariinsky Theater, are related because the Mariinsky Theater was renamed into Kirov Theater after Kirov's death. And that was the Stalin's decision, by the way. And there is so much irony or maybe even sarcasm in that. We will get to it because we know that Kirov was a great admirer of ballet and the ballerinas. Maybe that's what killed him eventually. I'm joking, but maybe I'm not. We'll talk about it in 20 minutes, 21. So here we are. So 2 more tours tonight. And after we are done with Kirov, I think there's going to be like 90-minute break, and then Jerusalem at the usual time. Last but one episode on the walls and gates. The last tour of walls and gates is going to be the next weekend, same time. And also already one of the scheduled tours is Russian Exodus, and we'll be talking about the Russian immigrants in Finland. Iranian Bomb final episode is scheduled for next Saturday with virtual tours, and hopefully more Batumi tours will be scheduled shortly. Definitely early this week, as I need to just reconfirm some of the things that were planned. And yeah, so after we're done with the walls and gates of the old city, we're going to walk. Well, because we walked around the old city and just past the gates and walls, but then we will be walking on the walls and above the gates because we'll be doing the ramparts tours to see what is hidden behind the doors, the gates and walls. Okay, enough of that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. You have all the links, you know, ways to support me, you know, where to find the recordings and where to find the tours to book. And yes, you have everything. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon in Leningrad. Bye bye. Thank you, Maria.